A circus horse mistreated for decades finally escapes his torment. After years of whippings and exhaustion, his first contact with freedom moves everyone who witnesses it. Deep scars begin to heal as he rediscovers his true nature. This story of resilience will touch your heart and show that it's never too late for a fresh start. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and comment which city you're watching this journey of animal redemption from. Under the blinding lights of the circus ring, a majestic 25-year-old white horse performs his act for the 1000th time. His hooves beat rhythmically against the ground as his body executes movements rehearsed to exhaustion. The audience applauds enthusiastically, marveling at the perfection of the movements, completely ignoring what hides behind that flawless performance. The animal's eyes, once lively and bright, are now dull, almost empty, reflecting only the distant echo of a long-lost vitality. Known only as Starlight, he carries invisible marks on his body to the public. Beneath the bright, colorful ornaments, decorating his white coat hide deep scars, silent witnesses to decades of cruel treatment. Behind the scenes, far from admiring eyes, the reality is grim. Whippings to correct imprecise movements, endless hours of training under scorching heat, cold nights in cramped, dirty stalls, and the constant deprivation of his most basic nature, the freedom to simply be a horse. The animal performs his routine with mechanical precision, as the ringmaster announces in a booming voice, "Ladies and gentlemen, behold the incredible Starlight, the most talented equine in the world." But what no one realizes is that every perfect movement carries the weight of 20 years of suffering. Each pirouette hides a silent groan. Each bow to the audience masks a broken spirit that can no longer endure another day in that existence of forced performance. That night, as the horse returns to his small stall after the show, something different hangs in the air. An unusual restlessness, a wind carrying the distant scent of rain and change. The handler, a rough man with hands calloused by routine cruelty, notices the weather's turmoil and hurries to lock up the animals, concerned only with finishing his work quickly to seek shelter. The sky, previously starry, quickly transforms into a dark, menacing mass. Within minutes, a devastating storm descends upon the traveling circus. Violent winds whip the colorful canvases, making them crack like giant whips. The temporary structure, set up just 3 days ago in that small town, begins to give way before the relentless fury of nature. Amidst the ensuing chaos, screams of panic mix with the deafening roar of the torrential rain. The circus crew runs desperately, trying to save equipment and protect valuable animals. In the confusion, a particularly loud crash resonates through the space. One of the main structures collapses, hitting the stable area. The impact severely damages the doors of the stalls where the animals are confined. For the first time in 20 long years, the door holding the white horse captive is partially open. No locks, no restraints, no barriers. The animal, initially frightened by the storm's noise, remains motionless, as if not understanding the significance of that opening. Lightning briefly illuminates the dark sky, revealing a path beyond the colorful tents, an unknown world beyond the boundaries that had always defined his existence. Instinct, dormant for decades of forced domestication, slowly awakens in the depths of his being. Without the watchful eyes of the handlers, without the whip always lurking, the horse takes a hesitant step towards freedom. Then another, and another. The relentless rain soaks his white coat, washing away the remnants of makeup and artificial ornaments. Each step takes him further from the circus. Each yard covered undoes a little of the invisible chains that had imprisoned him for so long. What begins as a hesitant walk turns into a timid trot, and finally, a desperate gallop. With no set direction, driven only by the primal desire to escape, the horse runs for the first time without commands, without expectations of perfection, without the constant threat of punishment. The storm, which initially seemed like a calamity, reveals itself as the hand of fate intervening in a life of suffering. The horse gallops across open fields, feeling the mud beneath his hooves, the wind in his mane, the rain on his body. Sensations almost forgotten from a time long ago, before captivity. Each step leads him further from his past and, unknowingly, towards an unexpected future. At dawn, when the storm finally subsides, the animal finds himself exhausted. His legs, accustomed to the circular movements of the ring, tremble from the effort of the long night run. Disoriented and hungry, he wanders through green hills until he spots a faded red barn in the distance. Guided by the basic need for shelter, he cautiously approaches the structure. The barn belongs to a small farm situated on the outskirts of town. Unlike neighboring properties, this one isn't dedicated to agriculture or commercial breeding. A modest wooden sign at the entrance reads, "New Hope Sanctuary, Rescued Animal Rehabilitation." The place is run by Clara, a 70-year-old woman who has dedicated the last 2 decades of her life to the care of animals abandoned, mistreated, and forgotten by society. Clara is no ordinary person. Before establishing the sanctuary, she worked for 35 years as a zoo veterinarian, witnessing firsthand the often cruel reality behind the cages and attractions. When she retired, she sold almost everything she owned to buy that small piece of land and transform it into a sanctuary for animals in need. Her white hair and a face marked by deep wrinkles hide an unshakable determination and profound knowledge of animal suffering. On that cold autumn morning, while making her morning rounds to check the damage caused by the previous night's storm, Clara notices something unusual. The barn door, which she is sure she locked the night before, is ajar. Cautiously, she pushes the heavy wooden door and peers inside. In a dark corner, trembling not just from cold but also from fear, stands a magnificent white horse. Even in the dim light, Clara can see the animal is in deplorable condition. His coat, which should be immaculate white, is yellowish and dull. His ribs are visible under the stretched skin, evidence of severe malnutrition. Old and new wounds cover parts of his body, and his gaze reflects deep terror when he notices the human presence. Clara, with her many years of experience, immediately recognizes the signs. This is not a lost or abandoned animal. He is a survivor. Systematic, prolonged abuse. Each scar on his body tells a story of abuse. Each defensive movement reveals a past of violence. "Hello, friend," she whispers softly, keeping her distance. "I'm not going to hurt you." The horse retreats further, into the corner, eyes wide with terror. Clara knows not to approach. Not yet. Instead, she slowly places a bucket of fresh water and some apples on the ground, then withdraws, letting the animal process that she isn't a threat. Normally, Clara would have immediately contacted authorities and reported the animal's presence. But something about this horse touched her deeply. Perhaps it was the eyes. Eyes she had seen before in other animals rescued from critical situations. Eyes that pleaded for a chance, even when they didn't know how to accept it. The sanctuary's financial situation couldn't be worse. Bills pile up on her desk, overdue notices stamped in red. The cost of medication for the animals already residing there consumes almost all her modest retirement income. Adding another animal, especially a horse who would clearly need intensive care, was a decision bordering on irresponsibility. Still, Clara decides to shelter him, even if only temporarily, until she can discover his origin and find a suitable place. This seemingly simple decision marks the beginning of a journey that will transform not only the horse's life, but also her own. The first few days are characterized by distance and observation. Clara spends hours simply sitting near the stall, reading a book or knitting, allowing the horse to get used to her presence. She notices he only eats when no one is around and remains in a constant state of alert. After a week, she attempts a closer approach but is met with aggressive neighing and defensive movements. When she tries to touch the animal with a soft brush, he nearly knocks down the stall divider in panic. Clara, however, isn't deterred. In her many years working with traumatized animals, she learned that recovery doesn't follow human timelines. Each animal has its own time, its own healing journey. The horse's behavior in the following months is erratic and unpredictable. There are days when he seems to accept Clara's presence, even eating apples from her hand. On others, he regresses completely, hiding at the slightest noise and refusing any contact. Clara observes patterns in his behavior. Certain objects trigger particularly violent reactions, Anything resembling a whip or elaborate harnesses provokes episodes of extreme panic. Loud noises, especially applause or fanfare music, make him tremble uncontrollably. A particularly revealing incident occurs when a well-meaning volunteer brings some riding equipment as a donation to the sanctuary. Seeing the harnesses and saddles, the horse goes into such a frenzy that he injures himself, banging against the wooden stall dividers. Clara immediately understands. This isn't just any horse. He's from the entertainment world, likely a circus. This revelation leads Clara to research circuses that had recently passed through the region. She discovers that, indeed, a traveling circus had performed in town shortly before the storm. Local reports mentioned a featured act with an impressive white horse. The pieces start to fit together, but Clara decides not to contact the circus immediately. First, she needs to fully assess the animal's condition and document the evidence of mistreatment. A veterinarian friend who occasionally provides volunteer services to the sanctuary confirms Clara's suspicions after examining the horse, a task requiring light sedation, given the animal's agitated state. The report is alarming. Besides the obvious malnutrition, the horse shows chronic joint damage, consistent with repetitive and unnatural exertion, scars consistent with frequent whipping, and a pattern of teeth wear typical of animals constantly biting metal objects, a stereotypic behavior common in animals kept in stressful confinement for long periods. Armed with this information, Clara makes a decision. She will not return the animal to those who mistreated him for so long. Her decision, though ethically clear to her, brings legal complications she cannot yet foresee. For now, she focuses only on gaining the animal's trust and beginning his physical recovery. The major breakthrough that changes the course of rehabilitation occurs by chance 4 months after the horse's arrival. Clara, who always appreciated classical music, leaves her small radio playing near the stall while doing routine chores. When the first notes of a Bach suite fill the air, something extraordinary happens. The horse, normally tense and agitated, visibly relaxes. His ears, always alert to any threat, move gently to the rhythm of the music. Intrigued, Clara experiments with different musical styles in the following days. The results are consistent. Classical music, especially Bach, has a notably calming effect on the animal. Jazz makes him slightly agitated. Pop music is met with indifference. But anything resembling circus music triggers reactions of extreme anxiety. This discovery becomes the key to establishing an initial bond. Clara installs small speakers in the stall, programmed to softly play Bach compositions for part of the day. Under the soothing influence of the Baroque melodies, the horse gradually allows longer approaches. 6 months after the rescue, when modest but significant progress is already visible, Clara receives a notice that threatens to destroy everything she has achieved. The small plot of land where she keeps the sanctuary, which she has rented for years, is being sold for the construction of a luxury resort. The owner, a businessman from the city, gives her only 90 days to vacate the property. The notice is a devastating blow. At 70, with extremely limited financial resources, Clara has no way to acquire another property or relocate the 17 animals currently under her care. The prospect of the sanctuary closing means not only the end of her life's work, but also an uncertain fate for creatures who depend entirely on her, especially the white horse, who has only just begun his recovery journey. Determined not to accept defeat passively, Clara starts a community campaign. She creates simple flyers detailing the sanctuary's work and the current situation, particularly highlighting the circus horse's story as a symbol of the sanctuary's importance. With the help of a few loyal volunteers, she distributes the material in local churches, schools, and businesses in the small town. Initially, the response is modest. Small donations arrive, insufficient to make a real difference. The community, though sympathetic, faces its own economic struggles. The situation seems increasingly desperate with only 75 days left until the deadline. The turning point comes unexpectedly when Mariana, Clara's granddaughter, comes to visit during a break from her university studies. At 22, Mariana has built a considerable social media presence as an advocate for veganism and animal rights. Witnessing her grandmother's work, and especially meeting the white horse and his story, she immediately recognizes the potential to reach a wider audience. With Clara's permission, Mariana begins documenting the sanctuary's daily routine, with a special focus on the horse's rehabilitation process. In a series of short videos, she shows everything from the most challenging moments, like the animal's panic episodes upon seeing objects reminiscent of the circus, to small daily victories, like the horse accepting a gentle touch or responding to Clara's call. What starts as a modest initiative quickly takes on a life of its own when one video, showing the moment the horse allows Clara to brush his mane while Bach plays softly in the background, is shared by a celebrity with millions of followers. Suddenly, the small rural sanctuary is in the social media spotlight. The online attention quickly translates into concrete support. Donations start pouring in from all over the country. A crowdfunding platform is created with the specific goal of raising funds to buy the property before it's sold to developers. Local newspapers and eventually a regional TV station produce stories about the sanctuary and the rescued horse. Among the many moved by the story is Renata, a young equine physical therapist living in a neighboring state. Touched by the videos and reports, she contacts Clara offering her volunteer services. After brief initial hesitation, Clara accepts the offer, recognizing the horse needs specialized care that goes beyond her own capabilities. When Renata arrives at the sanctuary, the horse already shows significant improvements in his social behavior. Though still wary of strangers, he no longer reacts with extreme panic to human presence. However, his physical problems remain critical. Renata, with trained eyes, immediately identifies chronic issues in the animal's joints and muscles, after effects of years of forced performances and excessive training. He needs a complete physical rehabilitation program, explains the young professional. His joints have suffered permanent damage, but with proper treatment, we can significantly reduce discomfort and restore much of his natural mobility. The challenge is immense. Before any physical treatment, Renata needs to earn the animal's trust. For 3 intense months, she simply spends hours daily near the horse, without trying to touch or handle him. She reads books aloud, shares stories from her own life, allows him to get used to her scent and presence. Gradually, the horse begins to accept the new human into his limited circle of trust. When he finally allows the first therapeutic touch, Renata nearly cries with emotion. The moment marks the beginning of the true physical rehabilitation process. The program developed by Renata is comprehensive. Hydrotherapy in a small, improvised tank, therapeutic massages, passive stretching exercises, and eventually, short walks on soft ground to strengthen atrophied muscles. Each small progress is celebrated by the ever-growing team of volunteers who now gather regularly at the sanctuary. During therapy sessions, Renata makes an intriguing discovery. Trying different verbal commands, she notices the horse responds surprisingly well to words spoken in German. This casual observation leads to an important revelation. The animal likely originated from a traditional European stud farm, possibly German or Austrian, before being sold to the circus. This discovery opens new possibilities. Clara and Mariana begin research to try to trace the horse's lineage. Through international stud farm records, and with the help of experts following the case via social media, they eventually find promising matches. Photos of a prize-winning colt from a traditional Austrian stud farm, missing for 15 years, show markings and characteristics strikingly similar to those of the rescued horse. In the 15th month after the rescue, as physical recovery progresses satisfactorily, and the campaign to save the sanctuary surpasses 60% of its financial goal, a new challenge arises. Torrential rains hit the region for 2 consecutive weeks, causing severe flooding. The creek running through the property overflows, quickly flooding the lower areas, including some installations where animals are sheltered. The situation quickly turns into an emergency. Clara, Renata, Mariana, and the volunteers work frantically to transfer the animals to higher ground. Goats, sheep, some rescued dogs and cats are relocated without major difficulty. The real challenge involves an 8-month-old filly, rescued from an abandoned farm a few weeks earlier. Terrified by the rapidly rising water, the young mare refuses to leave her stall, now partially flooded. Even the most experienced handlers can't calm her enough to lead her out. Time is running out, with the water already reaching her knees and continuing to rise. It's at this critical moment that something extraordinary happens. The white horse, normally kept in a separate enclosure, due to his special needs, demonstrates unusual agitation. Unlike the expected behavior, panic and escape attempts, he seems strangely focused towards the stall where the filly is trapped. When one of the volunteers approaches to check on him, the horse firmly pushes against his enclosure gate. At first, everyone interprets the behavior as fear, but it soon becomes clear there's something more. With surprising strength for an animal still in recovery, he keeps pushing until the latch gives way. Free from the enclosure, the horse doesn't flee to higher ground as would be instinctive. Instead, he heads directly towards the flooded stable. Clara watches the scene with a mix of astonishment and concern. Part of her fears that all the progress achieved will be lost in a moment of crisis, that the animal will revert to erratic behaviors triggered by panic. What happens next leaves everyone present in reverent silence. With surprising calmness, the white horse enters the water, slowly approaching the terrified filly. No sudden movements, no agitation. Positioning himself beside the young animal, he lets out a low, gentle whinny, a sound Clara had never heard from him before. The filly, who until then refused to move despite all human efforts, gradually calms down in the presence of the older horse. When he starts moving towards the exit, she follows him hesitantly. Step by step, the horse guides the young mare through the rising water until they reach safe ground. The episode marks a fundamental turning point, not only in the horse's recovery but in everyone's perception of him. The animal, long seen primarily as a victim, reveals a completely new dimension: the capacity for empathy, protection, and even leadership. After the flood crisis, the story of the horse's unexpected heroism circulates quickly, first among the volunteers, then in the local community, and finally reaches national audiences when Mariana shares the account on her social media, accompanied by photos of the dramatic rescue. The renewed attention attracts an important visitor: Nicolas Berguet, a renowned documentarian specializing in animal welfare stories. Impressed by the horse's trajectory and the sanctuary's work, he proposes producing a full documentary about the recovery journey. The presence of a professional film crew initially causes apprehension. Clara worries that cameras, lights, and equipment might trigger traumatic memories in the horse. To her surprise, the animal shows curiosity rather than fear. Nicholas and his small crew work with extraordinary sensitivity, always respecting the animal's space and needs. The filming documents not just the horse's physical evolution, but primarily his behavioral transformation. The animal that once trembled at the slightest human contact now allows children, carefully selected and supervised, to brush him. The being who lived in a constant state of alert now enjoys long naps in the sun. Most impressively, he begins to display protective behavior towards newly rescued animals, especially traumatized equines. It's as if he knows exactly what they're all going through, comments Clara for the cameras. He approaches them in ways we humans cannot. There's a communication that transcends our understanding. When it seems that, finally, everything is heading towards a positive outcome, a dramatic twist shakes the hard-won tranquility. In the 24th month after the rescue, a middle-aged man, dressed in expensive clothes and with an arrogant demeanor, appears at the sanctuary. He introduces himself as Arthur Vance, owner of the circus from which the horse escaped. "I've come to collect my property," he declares curtly, presenting documents that seem to legitimize his claim. "This animal is worth a lot of money. He's the main attraction of my show." Clara vehemently refuses to consider returning the animal. She shows the veterinary reports documenting the systematic abuse. She explains the extensive rehabilitation the horse has undergone. She pleads for compassion. Vance remains unmoved. "You have 1 week to return the animal. or you'll face legal action for misappropriation of property," he threatens as he leaves, leaving Clara devastated. The news spreads quickly among the sanctuary's supporters. The community that formed around the farm mobilizes immediately. A group of animal rights lawyers offers pro bono representation. The fundraising campaign, which had continued at a steady pace, gains new momentum with the imminent threat. "This isn't just about one animal," argues one of the lawyers in an interview with local press. "We're talking about a legal precedent regarding the treatment of sentient beings. This case could redefine how our society and our legal system view animals used for entertainment." The ensuing legal battle brings profound questions into debate. During the proceedings, evidence of the abuse suffered by the horse is meticulously presented. Testimonies from equine behavior and animal welfare experts strengthen the argument that returning the horse to the circus would be tantamount to condemning him to further suffering and possibly premature death. The circus's defense rests solely on arguments of property and economic value. "This animal represents a significant investment," insists Vance's lawyer. "He was trained for years for specific performances. His artistic and commercial value is invaluable." The case quickly transcends the small community's boundaries, attracting attention from national and international animal protection organizations. Activists hold peaceful protests in front of the courthouse during the hearings. The hashtag Freedom for Starlight becomes viral. In the 30th month after the rescue, after an exhaustive and emotionally draining legal battle, the final decision is delivered. The judge, in a landmark ruling, recognizes the horse's right to well-being as taking precedence over any claim of ownership. Although our legal system traditionally classifies animals as property, reads the ruling, the evolution of our understanding of animal sentience and growing societal concern for welfare demand a more nuanced interpretation of the law. When there is compelling evidence that an animal has suffered systematic abuse, the right of ownership must yield to the greater interest of preserving the life and dignity of the sentient being. The legal victory not only secures the horse's future at the sanctuary but also inspires changes in local regulations. In the following months, the county approves stricter regulations concerning animals used in entertainment, including mandatory inspections by independent veterinarians and limitations on working hours. With legal security established and part of the compensation paid by the circus, another surprising ruling by the judge, the sanctuary finally manages to purchase the property, ensuring its continuity. In the final months of these 3 intense years of journey, the place transforms into an officially recognized educational center. Local schools begin organizing regular visits, bringing children to learn about animal welfare and ecological responsibility. The former circus horse, now officially named Freedom, after an online poll, becomes a natural ambassador for the cause. To everyone's surprise, he shows extraordinary patience with the young visitors, allowing gentle petting, behavior that would have been unthinkable 2 years earlier. Nicholas Berger's documentary titled Beyond the Chains: Freedom's Journey is released at international festivals, winning awards and, more importantly, spreading awareness about the treatment of animals in circus shows. Inspired by the story, several traditional circus companies announced the phasing out of animal acts, replacing them with exclusively human performances. The most moving transformation, however, occurs in the relationship between the horse and Clara. In the last month of the 3rd year, the elderly woman suffers a fall that fractures her hip, temporarily limiting her mobility. During her recovery, confined to a wheelchair, she receives daily visits from the animal she saved. Every morning, as if perfectly understanding the situation, Freedom walks up to Clara's bedroom window and remains there, watching her attentively. The elderly woman, with the help of volunteers, is taken outside whenever the weather permits. And there, under the shade of an old oak tree, horse and human share moments of silent connection. "It's as if he knows exactly what I'm feeling," comments Clara to Mariana, who continues documenting the journey. "When I'm in pain, he stays closer. When I'm feeling better, he plays, runs a little, as if trying to cheer me up." This deep connection between two beings who knew suffering and found mutual comfort represents the true meaning of freedom. Not just the absence of physical chains, but the ability to form genuine bonds based on trust and mutual respect. Exactly 3 years after the stormy night that changed his destiny, the horse demonstrates a complete transformation. His body, once marked by scars and weakened by abuse, now boasts a shiny coat and healthy musculature. His eyes, once dull, with fear and distrust, now reflect a tranquility and curiosity that enchant all visitors. More important than the physical recovery is the restoration of his spirit. The animal who arrived broken, distrustful, and traumatized now exhibits natural behaviors of his species. He plays with other horses, rolls in the fresh grass, gallops freely through the fields, no longer in conditioned circular movements from the ring, but in straight lines, natural curves, expressing the pure joy of simply existing without expectations or demands. One particularly significant afternoon, Clara, now recovered from her fracture and leaning on a cane, watches Freedom running through the pasture, accompanied by the young filly he saved during the flood. There's a poetic beauty to the scene. The animal once deprived of his own nature now teaches another to live fully. "You know what's most extraordinary about this whole story?" reflects Clara to Nicholas, who returned to capture final footage for his documentary. "It's not just that we saved him. It's that, in many ways, he also saved us. He saved this sanctuary when his story mobilized people. He saved that filly during the flood. And in a way, he saved me too, reminding me daily why I started this work." The camera captures a perfect moment. The setting sun bathes the field in golden hues as Freedom slowly approaches Clara. Without commands, without expectations, the majestic animal gently lowers his head, allowing the elderly woman to stroke his muzzle. There is a silent communication between them, two survivors who, together, redefined the meaning of rescue. This is the true essence of freedom, not just escaping the physical chains of the past, but finding, in the present, the courage to trust again, to connect, to allow oneself to be truly seen and understood by another being. The horse who was once just an attraction, an object of entertainment, an act in the show, now has a complete identity, a story of resilience and an open future before him, no longer confined to the ring's vicious circle, but free to create his own path, day after day, under the open sky that is now his true home.